Good evening. In a socially distanced world, Design United is an optimistic digital platform for collaborative design and connection. In a socially distanced world, Design United is an optimistic digital platform for collaborative design and connection. Design United was created in March 2020 during a period of intense lockdown and quarantine measures within the region. The aim behind Design United was to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young regional designers and design practices. A much needed network of support and peer mentorship during these uncertain times. Talented young designers and design studios working on design innovation with an approach that is relevant to our South Asian region have been invited to be a part of the platform. We also encourage design students from the region to share their work, be involved in the dialogue, and to be an active part of Design United. Design United, most of all, believes in creating a community of designers and design knowledge that is largely contextual, with focus on contributing to the environment and our community. Design United believes greatly in a spirit of collaboration and idea exchange. Welcome to Design United's 19th Design Conversation. In conversation with two talented designers, Aditi Anuj, a textile designer with an origami practice, Adigami, joining us from Gurgaon, and landscape architect Hemali Samant, joining us from Mumbai. I'm Varna Shashidhar, founder principal of a regional landscape practice, VSLA, based in Bengaluru. I'm supported by Claywork Spaces in this endeavor and the Design United team. Clayworks creates flexible co-work spaces that focus on productivity and sustainability. Clayworks has come up with a new product, Spotch, which provides a complete work-from-home solution. The aim behind Design United is to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young designers and design practices, a much needed network of support and mentorship during these uncertain times. I would like to invite DU team members, Kavindu and Saakshi, to please introduce our speakers and to start the session. Thank you.
Hemali Samant is a practicing landscape architect based in Mumbai and did her master's in landscape architecture from CEPT, Ahmedabad. She believes in a hands-on approach where site and landscape integrate together. Every project of hers tries to explore native plants, local materials and techniques, responding to each biome, urban reality, and cultural context into design. She was a part of the AD 100 list of influential designers in India in 2017 and has won a few accolades for landscape design by IAD Architecture Digest India and ISOLA. Aditi Anuj has a double degree in textiles from the prestigious National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. Her recent claim to fame are the installations created for the second season of the Netflix series Sacred Games. She recently launched her own origami label by the name Adigami, where she aims to collaborate with more diverse fields of design. She's been practicing origami for 8 years now. I request Aditi to please share her screen.
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Aditi and I am a trained textile designer. Thank you so much, Saakshi, for the introduction. That was lovely. It's really nice to hear some good things about yourself at times. So thank you so much for that. So like I was saying, I'm a textile designer, a trained textile designer, but origami just happened to find me, or I just happened to find origami while I was still in college. and fortunate enough to find my teacher, architect Onkan Mitra. I'm sure you must have heard of him because he's a really big name in the world of origami, especially in India. His work has traveled the world, and I am so lucky to have him as my guru, my mentor, my teacher, my guide. And I cannot start any presentation without taking his name because he means a lot to me. So he was the one who had come to NID while I was still studying textiles and introduced us to the world of origami. And for the first time, I was fortunate enough to see how vast origami can be. It was before that, it was just holding a boat or a bird for me. But after that course, I realized the many possibilities of folding a piece of paper. So that is how I started with my journey, my origami journey. And but I was still not sure of how I could take it as a full-time profession because I was a textile designer and I wanted to explore textiles. And I even started working with the textile mill. But somehow I was always passionate towards paper. I was always folding a piece of paper. So it took me a while to realize that this is where my true passion was. And I sort of took that decision and and jumped into the pool of origami where I knew I had to, for the time being, leave behind textiles because origami was a very new field. It still is. I'm still exploring it. I won't say that I'm an expert in it. By no means I am. I'm still an explorer and I'm still exploring it. And today I'm going to present to you a small presentation of what I've done so far, of my explorations and my experiments with paper and of course other materials since paper doesn't last for a very long time. So here is a small resume, which I think I've already given you a basic idea of where I come from and what I've done so far. So to begin with, in 2016, I started collaborating with Onkan Mitra. I did a couple of projects with him because I wanted to learn more about origami and especially the commercial applications of it. How can we try origami with other materials? How can we make other products out of it? And most importantly, to be very honest, how to make money out of it, because there are so many people, if you see on Instagram, who do origami today, but they don't really know how to make money out of it, or how to sell it, or how to create things that can be created using other materials other than paper. So that was the main reason why I really wanted to collaborate, and I did this project with him where we created these beautiful lamps made out of leather for Apparao Gallery, which is in Chennai. So the lamp that you see on the left is modular origami, where there are individual pieces which are folded exactly the same way and connected together to make a bigger structure. So on the left, you can see a fold by June Mitani, which we connected together to make this lamp. And then on the right side, you can see a tessellation where we've sort of played around with the form to see how we can drape it on a lamp. So that is some explorations that you can see, which then became, of course, the final products for the gallery. So it was a very fun project because it really was the first time I was exploring leather as a medium. Leather is by no means an easy material to fold because you need a lot of strength, and more than strength, you need a lot of patience to fold leather, because the material is it's very it has a mind of its own. You would want it to fold and make a certain form, but it won't, because it's leather after all, right? It has its own properties, and that's what it's going to add to the product. So the fun part was that we made all the prototypes of these lamps in paper, and when we converted it in leather, when we made the same product in leather, we realized that that particular lamp is not acting the way it should act, because it acted that way in paper. So the challenge was how to make it, how to still work around that form and create something that would be functional and be also look beautiful. So on the left, top left corner, if you see the lamp that we've made was supposed to be a cylindrical lamp. But because it did not take that form, like the end product did not take that form, we had to sort of, I did a small patch of weaving, which you can see in the second image, so that we not only just embrace the form that the leather has taken, but also add some detailing to it. So coming from a textile background, weaving being my most special part about textiles. So I wanted to incorporate that in my lamp. So I did a patch of weaving, which also brought the two edges together, like you can see in the lamp, and also added a certain level of detailing. Similarly, in the other lamps, you can see how I've added weaving because I wanted to hide the bulb. Since we loved the form so much and we wanted to sort of embrace it. So the best way to hide the bulb was to have a panel of a woven structure there. So like you can see, these are all the explorations that, not all, but some of the explorations that we did with leather, with the form, and with the structure, which was lots of fun, lots of fun. And of course, by the end of this project, I couldn't use my thumbs anymore because they were so sore because of all the folding that I had to do on the leather. That yes, my thumbs were absolutely sore and I couldn't use them. But no pain, no gain, no pain. There's no gain without pain, right? So the end result you can see, and it was extremely rewarding to see my products being exhibited in the gallery. So I guess it was worth it. Then I did a couple of more lamps for some as a residential project where they wanted lamps for their own private, residences. So again, using leather, and this time doing a little bit of kirigami. Kirigami is when you cut in origami, so that, and it adds a lot of structure to the form, and also interacts with light and casts beautiful shadows. So I wanted to explore that. So here are some pictures of the lamps that I did. Again, all of them are made out of leather. Some more explorations. Then I also wanted to explore animal folding, but a different type of animal folding. And I wanted to make a light out of it. So this is this is made out of paper. There's no leather here. So this is a reindeer's face for a wall. Then we did a small project where it was a couple was getting married and they wanted to give return gifts to their guests. So we sort of made an abstract boy and a girl dancing together. And we made 64 pieces of these sculptures as their return gift with a little LED light underneath. If you can see in the pictures on the left bottom corner, you will see how the form looks like. So through these projects and explorations, you can see how origami is not limited to just animal folding or tessellations. It can be something so much more than that. Then this was a project that we did for Lexus car launch. So this is the making of it. Let me show you the final piece first. This was the art structure that we made, which was hanging on the car. Since Lexus is a Japanese car, they wanted to embrace origami, and hence we got this project. So here you can see we've made this structure out of polypropylene sheets, which are individually folded. And now I can go back and show you how we did the folding. So this is Onkan's office where we did the project together with his team. And here we're folding the polypropylene sheets, sticking them together, tying them together. On the left side, you can see how many people together are folding the structure, because it's huge, weighing 80 kilos. So obviously one person cannot do it on his own. So a lot of people have to come together to sort of work as a team. So then we were, this is where we were installing the art piece. So you have to first open the art piece and open the pleats and make sure that the thread is right, the pleats are right, the weight is equally divided, and then you lift the piece. And the lifting is very interesting, how you have anchors at different, depending on how heavy your structure is, depending on the form that you want to make. There are a lot of factors that actually decide on how many people would be required. So we were around 7 of us who installed this piece together. And like you can see in the images, how we're lifting the piece up. And the entire piece has to be lifted up at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to tear. So all of that requires an extreme level of a lot of skill. So yeah, that is how we hung the piece. And then this is the final piece, as you can see in the pictures. So the whole piece was around 150 kgs. We used around 350 sheets of polypropylene, and it took us 5 days to make this. A lot of fun. So we did this, and then we did another project where this was Ambani and Piramal's wedding in Mumbai, in their Worli house. And they again wanted a similar structure like Lexus. So something very similar to what we did in Lexus. So I'll just quickly show you the process pictures. But this was much larger than what we did for Lexus. This structure itself was around 250 kgs. And we folded around 1,500 sheets for this. So massive project. So this was the hall where it was installed. If you can see the bottom image, it shows the entire art piece hanging. And it took us 4 days and nights to install the piece. The fun part about this piece was, and actually, you know, the thing about installations is that half of the work is done when you make it, but half of the work is done when you install it. So if you think installing is just a very small part of the entire making of a project, it's not. It's one of the major parts. And most of the work, most of the manipulations and alterations have to be done when you're actually installing the piece. So a really fun story about not fun now then, but fun now, is when we were installing this piece, this one sort of ribbon that you see hanging in the air was 150 kgs. And the ropes that we were carrying, we did not realize were not strong enough. So we had to come up with so many. It took us 2 days to come up with ways how we should go about it, how we should hang the entire structure. So we had to add pulleys. Can you see the pulleys on the right side? So we had to add that to the ropes, because the ropes were otherwise, because of friction and because of the weight, they were breaking again and again. So we had to add the pulley, so it becomes easier for the ropes to take the weight, and that is how we were able to finally suspend the structure. So that was the installation for a Ambani Piramal wedding. I hope I have enough time, because I have no track of time. All right, I'll go quickly now. So there are a lot of other projects that we did. This is for a restaurant in Bandra that we did with paper. So this is all colorful paper using modular origami, and this was supposed to be an artwork for the wall. Yeah, so that was one. Then we also explored metal for the same project. This is actually, all of this is metal, where on the right bottom corner, you can see how the metal was laser cut, and there were holes that were laser cut on the metal so that the pieces could, and of course the whole form was inspired by origami so that the pieces could fit in each other and we could screw at every joinery. So that is how we created this structure, of course, using a lot of injuries happened in this because, of course, this is metal and metal hurts. So it's not easy to work with metal. It was very painful. But again, I mean, when you see your work as a whole, you don't feel the pain. You just feel the joy of being able to create it. So yeah. Then then we did props for a theater which was called Animals Out of Paper, which happened in Delhi last year. And for that, they wanted, for the play, there had to be a 5 feet wide hawk that was suspended from the air. So I folded the hawk, which had 450 folds in it. If you can see the hawk on the right, the left one is actually the first prototype that I folded, which is obviously not folded that well. But the second one on the right is the third prototype that I folded, and there I was sort of getting to the right folds and was able to attain the right form. So, and then finally, on the top left corner, you can see that was the size of square that I folded. It was 13 feet by 13 feet. And like I said, there were around 450 steps to folding this hawk. And it took me 4 days to fold it. I also have a time lapse of the folding of this hawk, which is on my Instagram page. So you can go to my Instagram page and see the entire time lapse. It's very interesting how we started folding it and how it became what it became. So this was the hawk that we folded, which was one of the props for the theater. Then other than that, we also made a backdrop for them, which you can see here in this image. And we also made another backdrop for their Valentine's Day scene where they wanted a huge golden fan with hearts on it. So we first made a prototype in paper, and then we made a prototype using a golden thick chart paper and made it into a fan. So that was Animals Out of Paper. If you guys ever have the chance to watch it, if it happens again, please watch it because it was a lovely play. Probably the first play that I've ever heard of, which was completely based on origami. So the story of the play revolved around origami, and so did the props. So it was a very interesting concept. And like I said, if you ever get a chance, please do watch it. Then I made this piece for Shadi Squad office, their head office in Mumbai. And for this, they wanted something related to marriage since they were a wedding planning company. So I did not want to take a direct route to or a direct approach to marriage. I wanted to bring some element of fun to it, some element of color to it. So I got inspired from yin and yang. And the whole idea was to show the transformation from black to white or white to black with the colors in between, because marriage is the colors in the middle, is all about the colors in the middle. And so I wanted to basically project that through my work. So here I've used modular origami, and the size of paper that I've used to fold is, you can see it in the picture on the top right corner. The paper was around 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch, and the total number of modules that I made for this project were around 2,500 with 33 shades. So it took me a very long time to fold it and then, of course, to assemble it and to get the right um, ombre while I was connecting the modules. So again, a very challenging project, but extremely rewarding. So this is the piece front and back that you can see, and of course the final piece in the office. So I also applied to a competition happening in the University of Glasgow where I got the first prize, and my piece went on the cover page of their annual magazine, which is E Sharp. So that was actually the first award that I ever won, and extremely rewarding. Extremely happy with it. Then, of course, the Sacred Games happened in the beginning of 2019, where they showed me the logo that you can see on the left top corner. They showed me the mandala logo, and they wanted me to translate that logo in origami. So there were a lot of different types of folds and folding patterns that I initially made, and then finally they finalized this. And that is how we created. So they are all individual rings, like you can see in this slide, which came together to form the final mandala, which is on the right. And we made some more pieces because they wanted to use a lot of origami for the decor of their sets. So I made long sort of ribbons for them, which they could hang from the ceiling or put them on the wall or put them on the floor. However they wanted to display it. They just wanted to have some extra pieces with them. So on the right, you can see the mandala, how they've displayed it during their shoot. And on the left side, you can see that huge ribbon that I had made. They've suspended it. They've basically connected it from the ceiling and the floor. And I think it looks absolutely beautiful how they've managed to use it. So yeah, everything, this entire art piece was made out of paper since it was for temporary use. So I've used handmade paper for all of this. So then there was another project that I did for a restaurant. These are multiple mandalas which are folded using polypropylene sheets, which were then displayed. And there was LED light behind them to add to the structure. Then this was the first time I used textiles in origami, where we ombre dyed raw silk fabric and fused it to polypropylene sheets. And the theme here was water, and I wanted to use the tones of blue for that. So like you can see on the right side, I made 3 individual frames, and that gave the illusion of water. So that is the final piece hung in the office. And for this project as well, I used raw silk, and the theme here was earth. So I wanted to use all the earthy colors for this. So there were long stretches of fabric that were fused together and folded and then made into a circle, like you can see in the image, and then were displayed to another office, but in the same campus. So again, using fabric for the first time. It was, I would say it was really interesting to use fabric because fabric has its own properties to add to the structure, which you have to be very careful of. Sometimes it can add to the form, sometimes it can take away from the form. So there were places where of course, I was challenged, but I guess that's the whole joy of doing a project, especially when the material challenges you and you sort of come up with ways to make sure that whatever the material is doing, you allow the material to do it and enhance it at the same time, which was extremely rewarding. And then this project, this was a wedding happening in Chennai, for which they wanted 4,500 cranes to be hung on the stage, because the theme was Akash and they wanted 4,500 birds to be hung. So for this project, of course, I could not hold that many cranes on my own. So I involved as many people as I could from all over the country, my friends, my family, my students, my interns, and volunteers, their mothers. So, I mean, there were around 35 people who actually helped me fold this. And look at the number of birds that we folded together. And this is how we displayed them. Each bird was individually hung from the chicken wire that you can see on the left. And this is the final show. Then I guess this is the last project that I put in the presentation. This is Pavitra Rajaram's office. She was the ex-head designer at Good Earth, and very recently she's launched her own. Now she's on her own, and she wanted an art piece in her office where there is a flight of birds which are trying to escape from a window, and for this we used leather again for the making of these birds. And this piece was featured on AD as well. So the most interesting part about installing this art piece was, of course, the installation, because it was challenging in a way that the birds had to be realistic. And I also added wires to their wings so that I could explore that angle as well, where, of course, which origami would not really allow. But if I add wires to their wings, then of course I can play with the up and down of the movement of the birds. So that's what I tried to explore in this art piece. And if you can see how each bird is individually hung and at a different height. And I wanted to have that wave that all the birds are flying up and then they're coming down and trying to get out of the window. So to get that right, and also we couldn't have a lot of hooks on the ceiling, as you can see. So there were a lot of challenges that we faced, of course, with this project. But we managed to hang all of these. There were 51 birds which are part of this flight. So there you can see it. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I hope you enjoyed the projects that I've done. I look forward to many more such projects where I am continuously challenged by not just the craft, but also by the medium that I use. And of course, my own ideas. So I look forward to many such more endeavors. Thank you so much for being a part of this presentation.
Thank you, Aditi. That was a really wonderful presentation. I think a lot of us generally understand origami as just folding little squares of paper, but you've really shown us that it's so, so much more. And your installations and the way that you carry out your craft is absolutely amazing to see. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
We're now going to have architect Hemali Samant share her landscape architecture with us. I request architect Hemali to kindly share her screen.
Thank you, Saakshi. Aditi, it was a very wonderful presentation, and I can see a lot of nature patterns that in your origami. So, just the content is a nice thing that now I'm taking forward the idea of landscape and, the how we take. So I believe only presenting my work and see how what goes behind in making of landscape. So I'll be sharing you 2-3 projects which are really exploring the idea of landscape and the whole. As a profession, I feel many of outsiders feel that landscape is only about uh, planting or maybe only about plants, but I think a lot goes behind it. And I'll share you few projects ranging from residential, commercial, and institutional. So I'll go through that first. So this is a project called Dumas House, which is located in Surat, city of Surat in Gujarat. And this is primarily a project which had an existing Portuguese villa, and the client wanted an extension to that house. So it is a second home to that place. So here the idea generally for landscape came to us that, how do you have a very strong context where, you have a very ordered existing structure, and how do you make and enhance it and complements that whole landscapes into it. So we came like with an idea where, you can use a lot of localized or patterns which is more complements that whole structure. And the structure itself had a very strong symmetrical thing you see in the sketch here. So we brought also the use of materials were very raw in nature, in terms of that how do you use gravel, uh, I mean the bricks, the pigmented texture. So this whole idea of that, how do you communicate landscape in terms of hand gestures, then creating textures in nature. So these were few processes that you see. If you see the brick, it is not actually a brick, because client didn't wanted to use brick as a actual brick as a material, because it was very close to coastal area and it had some problems in terms of humidity, and Surat itself has a very humid climate. So we use this as a paver block, but use that paver block in a way it is used as a brick. So this is are the few patterns that we can think of. And this is the project done, like few projects photographs. So you see there is a sense of foreground to the place, which is a small water body and a circular paving and a lot of bulbous plants. And because it had a existing mango orchard, there were a lot of shade in that area. So we used a lot of shade loving plants which could survive into the, although client wanted something very flowering in nature, but I think it could not have survived if you have tried it. So this is that space. Uh, Second project, this is Naturals Now, which is a Naturals ice cream parlor in Bombay. And this project, if you see image on the left, this is the structure that they bought, and this was the place where, they started. Client came with a brief that, they started their whole business uh, 35 years back, and they want to create, like, celebrate this whole Naturals ice cream as a brand into Naturals Now, where they actually churn the ice cream in front of you and allow give you and serve them freshly out of the churner. So if you see this image, there were very tight spaces on the left hand side and on the right hand side with a few existing coconut trees. And the sketch, the concept sketch, because we had to provide something as an outdoor sitting area as a part of a program where, they wanted that people go out and eat ice cream but amidst nature. So the client were very keen to create something which is very forestry, very tropical, or very something which is close to nature. But the challenge here is, if you see, these are almost like a margin areas which is only 5 to 6 feet wide. So we came up with an idea where, where one can walk over the nature. So if you see, these are all rectangular jalis, which are very easy metal jalis where you can walk over it, and they are like literally 500 plants below the jali. So idea here is that, you allow to walk as if you're walking on a grassy or green patches, and of course the creepers above it. So that was the idea, and this is what the project looks now, where the front facade was treated. If you see, the circular pattern was, we came up with the whole idea of journal, because the ice cream churns round in a nature, so that's how it was interpreted in that. And on the facade we had all small plants which can, give a sense of nature into the whole facade making exercise. Few movable furniture, outdoor furniture, which can, it's very flexible in a way that anyone who comes in a groups or group of two or group of three, then, just pull it, lift it, and use it wherever you can have stuff. And this is what it looks now. This is a very recent picture on the left, and right is when the project was just complete, and you can see that his whole idea of nature has overtaken, and this entire cave has become very close, and you cut off from the uh, other parts of the city. This project is BKC Sculpture Plaza. This is a public project in Mumbai, and this is the site. If somebody is aware, it's a Bandra Kurla complex, and where this is the very starting point where you enter towards the Bandra Kurla complex. So this is a government project with MMRDA, where they were very keen to do something where it becomes like an entrance plaza, where it tells that it's a BKC area, and they wanted to have some sculpture which talks about only as a BKC part. So these are the few initial site images where it was almost like there was an existing public toilet which was only used for people surrounding or commuters, because in Bombay everybody, the Bandra station is very nearby. So all the corporate offices walk till Bandra station, crossing from this area. So challenge here was that initial the condition was, if you see the image on the right, there was only two green patches with the existing toilet, and this becomes a very strong two parts of the whole site. So the idea that we thought that why can't we just open this whole land and treat it as a plaza where everybody is allowed to sort of move in from one end to another end. So that's how that just that idea that green gets spread toward the entire plaza. So we came up with this circular where it's like an exploded green patches all over the plaza. This is where the sculpture is. These are a few illustrations that we did. And this is the final plan. So, sort of this whole garden is become like a plaza. We introduced few sitting areas, few benches, few lawns area. We retain all the existing trees, which are very important. Put a nice approach way to the toilet block, and sort of there were two bus stops here, and there's one overhead bridge that connects a skywalk. So sort of people come, have a pause, use public toilet. It sort of creates a atmosphere, a sense of a plaza where it almost uh, it's a transition space into the city, and it becomes more green in nature. That's the central PKC sculpture part with the fountain. So this is what it looks now, where this is the BKC sculpture fountain. These are the very recent images, because it's still we have to inaugurate, and but yeah, in this COVID time we got a better shots now. So yeah, we introduced a lot of hardy trees, because I think the site is surrounded from all the three sides with the road. So there is going to be a lot of pollution and noise and everything. So we created something uh, which is very hardy in nature, requires less amount of maintenance. So these were the key aspects of using it. This is what it looks now. This project is very close to my heart, and a very, very important project in my career till now. So it's called Avsara Academy, and this is a project in collaboration with Case Design Architects. I think I was very fortunate to work many color artists, carpenters, everyone who's worked very hard on this team. So briefly talking you about Avsara, it's an NGO for girls' school, and it's a residential school. So, and the client was very keen to do something for a rural community, in terms of it is located into Pune, where the rural villages, girls are not allowed to do the further education after 10th standard. So here the idea was that why can't we have and bring those girls to this whole education, and it's called Avsara Leadership Institute. And yeah, I'll show you the process of how this project worked and what all went behind to making of this project. Site is located in Pune, that's in Maharashtra. And if you see the general topography of the site is on the bottom of the site, it's very hilly part, and this is almost like a middle part of the thing, and it's surrounded by all the farmlands, all like primary of it's a village, it's a part of the village land. And this is the first site image when we went to the site, and there was The challenge here was there was no electricity, no water connection, a very, very eroded soil, a rocky substrata, and almost zero funds, I would say, where there's no funds for the landscape and no official landscape contractor to involve themselves into this whole thing. We did a quick analysis in terms of, because it was a sloping land, so this was the highest point and that's the lowest point, and that's how the primary water movement and drainage pattern happens. There was an existing well which was blasted by villagers surrounding and which was not used by them. So that was became a very primary focal point for starting on thinking about landscape planning into this project. And we did a lot of water studies because I think water was very important, because otherwise if there is no water we won't be able to do any or able to survive any kind of landscape or be part in this region. So these were the some studies that what if we can connect the well with this reservoirs, or we make a single reservoir, or we make a check dam. So there are a lot of strategies that we tried, and of course the cost was primary source of decision. But I think more than that, how what will survive and what kind of substrate it had. So these were the few water studies that we did. Uh, also, the landscape intent and strategy for this project was mainly maximize use of local resources, cost-effective strategies using local technologies. Of course, this project drive was the cost. I think everything depend primarily on the cost, because it was an NGO, and once as and when money came, we started building things. So they were initially, we had thought this a larger plan that, we'll use on-site, we'll create an on-site plant nursery, we'll use vegetable farming, we'll try to reuse and recycle a lot of materials that is on the site. So these were the prime focus for this project. This was the first, sort of a master plan with our with architect like Sam and I. So what we can do with limited amount of money that we have. So water was always on our mind, water body, water channels, all sort of thing that was a prime importance to start this project. So water, again, I'll go one by one and explain you that how this whole water management happened. Uh, these is then entry to the site. This is B3, B4. These are the few buildings which we got the fund for. So I would say this is the phase one that happened. So first, initially we got funds for only this building, that is B3. So we have started building up this whole B3, and parallelly we started building up, wells, polishing pond, and understanding the whole campus uh, management and in terms of how we plan it. So these were the water, because this is the highest level. All these blue rectangles that you see, we called it as a landscape tanks. I'll explain you what's that. So this is a process of desilting the well. So that was, if you see, a very local machine, a diesel operated machine with a very local people. And this was a process where we desilted the well just to understand that how much perennial the water is going to be there. So again, it's a very local way of using it. And that's how we came up with a well. We did a lot of water studies, how much pH level of the water is, how potable the water is, and then everything tested and tried it. We invested, just formalizing this whole well, which become a primary source of water now. These are the water landscape tank. We tell it as a landscape tank because it is an intermediate tank where where channels are connected at and collected the water at intermediate level, and then from there the channel, I mean the network of the water channels are created all over the site. So again, in terms of, usually in architecture or landscape, we see a lot of drawings that we draft and do a lot of stuff. But this was more on hands-on approach where you took decisions on site, and a lot of decision depend upon the feasibility of it. They were on sketch with collaboration with farmers, with people, with locals, and understanding the volumes and everything. So that's how we did this.
The surrounding villages mainly use wells as a primary source of water. So the whole idea which initiated when I first visited site that we really have to manage water, because until we don't manage water, there is no landscape. So then we came up with water channels, create a network of water which can spread all over the site and we can use it extensively as part of landscape. This is a very traditional method. Like the farmers use this method of planting various fields. So since it is a sloping land, we had this elevated water channel which can run throughout the site, and in between we can have connection which can water all the plantations surrounding.
So that's our water channels that we created. Uh, then other part is to reuse and recycle. So these are the reed bed filtration techniques, which where you the water from the toilet blocks and the washing machine and a very small amount gets filtered naturally through this plantation, and that's how it gets filtered and comes to the polishing pond. Polishing pond meaning it polishes, the water is get polished and filtered and comes to this pond. Again, the volume of water and calculation is an architect case, Sam, that we had to do and measure everything ourselves because of lack of labors, lack of budget and everything. So all the slopes and everything were checked, and I think JCB was the only machine that was available in that region, and we did everything with that only machine that we could best use it for this. That's what it looks during the monsoon. It is completely filled with water. The surplus water, of course, is used and connected with the neighboring farmlands. That's what it looks during the summers, meaning when this completely depends upon the usage of buildings, because once the building gets used, this will get filtered and filled up. So coming to plantation, and so these were the boundary plantation. So we got, we had got 100 plants and few creepers free of cost from nearby plant nursery, and we just planted along the boundary because we as a team with architects were very keen that it should happen simultaneously. So once everything is occupied, it should not become a barren land. So this was a parallel process while doing this whole thing. So these are few planting. Again, if you see, there are only 2 3 neighbors labors. Then the point that came is that okay, we got the plants for free, but then how do we water it? So there was no water connection. This how we sort of a local jugaad where this guy is just putting bucket into the water that's available, and that's how we watered the entire boundary areas. And this is what it looks now, where completely very beautiful Chequemontia creepers. This uh, again talking about the soil. The soil was very eroded, and soil is a cost for the project because we need a good soil to allow good plants or farming activities that can happen here. So what we strategically did that whatever soil or excavated material that came out of the foundations, we tried to level the entire level in terms of farming, and then use this boulder there because it's a substrata was very rocky. So we got a lot of boulders from the foundation, and that's how we started bunding the level so that it allows water to retain the water, and then something can grow over it, and it also stops eroding the soil. So there was completely less erosion of soil after doing this. Again, even to survive some amount of this is a bamboo, this is very hard in nature, but still we had to do this stone bundings to allow water and survive them to go and establish into the ground. These are the few final patches of vegetable farming. The idea for vegetable farming also came with, because since it is a residential school and girls are going to have their food, so there was a large canteen area, and we thought that why can't we grow our own food and try to use a lot of vegetables and about daily basis, like vegetables like fenugreek, palak, then tomatoes, and these were like seasonal, because there were a lot of farmland activities happening here. So they used to tell us that what can farm in which part of the months, what to grow. So there was constant changing of plants, and it's almost like a use local uh, thing and have it on us. So these are few patches. These are the cabbage and flower. Again, I've been talking about the cost because cost was a very primary part. So there were like lot of calculation back and forth, understanding that what would be the cost for nursery, like small details, and how do we like minimize what were the priorities in terms of timeline, labor cost, then material cost, all of that. So it was a very extensive calculation that we had to go through in order to come to some point. This is a setting up our plant nursery. We got lot of small saplings, like 5 rupee a sapling, and then we can use it later, like once the buildings are established, and then we can use a better grown plants surrounding the buildings. uh, Also, as a landscape architect, we had to add, like aesthetics were also part of important things. So planting was a primary part of this whole program, where we can uh, uh, we can use a lot of local materials. So these were the few planting plants and sketches. So a lot of hardy and bulbous plants were used. So in a way that bulbous plants, meaning it can multiply every season. So if you plant 10, these are again few buildings and some planting activities. Again, we did a lot of mixed planting in the nature so that it doesn't look like a monotonous planting where only one species is planted. So we try to inculcate a lot of textures and heights and different types of shrubs into this whole part. These are the bulbous plant that I was talking about, where you can, it easily multiplies. If you plant two, then it will become five. So a lot of quantification of the plant material also important. So we get hundreds and hundreds more every year, and we can plant and clean the entire region. Again, if you see this JCB is like the only source to transport one material. That's how we transplanted few plants, few trees, and only two labors to do the entire thing. This was very important specimen, that is a rain tree, which was a part of the courtyard, and we had to spend this because it's a very important tree for this entire courtyard, and that's how we got like 15 to 20 feet high sapling from the nursery, and that's how this is an installation project where the standing man is the farmer who is giving supports to the rain tree, and that's what it looks now. So this almost the entrance courtyard becomes very important for the girls to, there's this good morning sunlight to read, to hang around, to talk, to chat, to play. So almost this whole entrance becomes a part of the activity underneath the tree. I'm hopeful that this tree really will cut off the entire courtyard. The girls' participation was also important because I think this campus had no maintenance strategy. There were only two gardeners who could, and this was a 4-acre land, and it was very difficult to manage. So these have the school itself created teams of 10 to 15 girls. You can take few patches and try to sort of maintain it, do some weeding process, some watering, taking care of it, adding manure. So these are kind of things that a leadership should do in terms of this maintenance program. The hardscape was very also important. This came with a conversation with the stone contractor, which we showed that some very famous Piconus paving that we thought that if we can use it. So these are the wastage granite and stone slabs which came, which were unused and which quarries doesn't want to use it. So we got like few brasses of this almost a wasted stone slab. So that's how we tried to create the hardscape, very beautifully done. And that's what it looks now. This is the whole green campus. So see, it's very beautifully where all the girls, like outdoor education was equally important and involvement of participants. I think that was very, very keen that we thought that, it adds a value to the campus, that it's just not about creating garden or creating something which is only visual, but also it's more participatory. So this is what the phase one is, which is done with 3 buildings, and phase two is ongoing. And yeah, that's what looks now. Yeah, I would just end with this because Indian civilization has been distinctive in locating its source of regeneration, material and intellectual, in the forest and not in the city. India's best ideas have come where the man was in commune with trees and rivers and lakes and away from the crowds. Thank you so much. Hope you liked this presentation and thank you for participating.
Thank you, Architect Hemali, for that wonderful presentation. It was so great seeing the way that you took us through your process and your projects. And I'm sure that the audience and our moderators have a lot of interesting questions for you. So we're going to jump right into the moderation segment now. I'm going to introduce our moderators for the day. We now welcome Shrestha Bid, a graduate from Brick School of Architecture, Pune, who currently is a junior architect with Thomas Associates in Bangalore. And she is moderating alongside Chris Dennis Vegas, a second-year architecture student from Wadia School of Architecture, joining us from Mysore today. So welcome, moderators, and we begin the discussion.
Thank you, Saakshi, for introducing us. So we'll be moving on to the question answer session after these wonderful presentations done by Aditi and architect Hemali. So moving over to Chris for the first question.
Good evening. So my question was to architect Hemali. My question would be, where do you think that landscape architecture would complement a structure or define it?
I think it's more about, I would say both, because it also defines architecture in a way, because sometimes, as you see the project of Avsara, I think without landscape, it wouldn't have created this whole atmosphere or environment of that whole project. And also it complements in terms of aesthetics, where talk about many beautiful flowering and butterfly, like it creates an atmosphere. So I would say it's both, that one goes into that project. Even for naturals now, I think without that whole idea of creating that nature thing, it couldn't have completed that project.
Yeah, over to architect Shrestha.
So my question is to architect Hemali. Your projects try to explore native plants, local materials and techniques. There may be times that your visions, they contradict with your client's visions. And in moments like these, what would be the middle ground?
I think every project has that struggle. I'm still struggling, I would say, because I think that happens with each project. I can't say that we had a lot of fights sometimes to make them understand. But there's no strategy to it. But I would say I would always try to educate them that why we are doing this. Like, for example, in that Dumas house, he was very keen to do a lot of flowering. He came with whole flower garden in his mind. And then with this whole debate that it can't grow, it can't survive, you're investing some money, then it's not going to survive. And then again, there were different thing. Even for the offset, I think client was very keen to do right away using of lot of mango trees, coconut trees. I said, there's no water, what will you do? You can't grow like that. So first, you try to be logistic in a way that it's logical in a way and try to bridge that gap. And but of course, it's a you have to do some way out to manipulate. Sometimes I think you have to do
I guess that's the process.
that. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's the process for
now
sure.
moving over to Chris.
Yeah. So my question was to Aditi. Since all of the installations that your work portrays are on a large scale, what is the process to attain that end product?
So, because all the projects are large, of course, like I was even talking about it in my presentation, that material has a lot to contribute to the structure. You know, whether it's a small structure or a big structure, the minute you change the material, the entire form can change because, of course, it's adding its own character to it. So when we have to make bigger structures, there are a lot of things that you have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind in as to whether you want it for a longer period of time or for a shorter period of time. The other thing that you have to look at is, of course, how much weight can the ceiling take? Where are the hooks? How I'm going to suspend it? Is it only the art piece that is going to be there, or are there other pieces that are going to sort of interact with the artwork and add to it or take away from it? Then the color, the material, how heavy can I make it? Like, for example, polypropylene sheet is very heavy. So if at all the structure can take the weight, as in not the art piece, but the place from where I'm going to suspend it. Like in the Lexus project, there was a truss that was installed, and the entire piece was actually installed from that truss because there were no hooks. It was a five-star hotel where the event happened, so we couldn't really drill holes on it. So there are a lot of factors that you have to sort of keep in mind, especially with the installation of it. That starts the process of where I'm going to install it and how I'm going to install it. And then it's a reverse role. So for that, what material am I using? How many pieces do I need to cover that space? So those are the kind of factors that you have to, of course, keep in mind. And of course, the budget, very important. That is the first thing that anybody would ask. Like, you can't make these pieces cheaper than, like, I'm sure Hemali would understand. She was talking about that school where she had to work with very low budget. So with plants, I'm sure you can still do a little manipulation. But where you have to cover a ceiling and you need material to cover it, and you need people to fold it, and you need to pay these people who are going to fold it. Like we did a project for Mumbai, which actually did not happen, unfortunately, because of COVID. But I had to hire so many interns to fold it because we had to fold 500 sheets of paper, um, uh, and we had very limited time, of course. So there are a lot of factors: time, material, place, space. So these are the things that you have to keep in mind. The budget when you start planning, especially the bigger structures. Yes.
Yeah. So over to Shrestha.
So my question is for Aditi. How have you applied paper folding techniques outside the world of origami in your day-to-day life?
All right. So day to day, so there is one thing very interesting that you need to know about origami, and that is that the spelling of origami is not Origami. It is Patience. That's the spelling of origami. That's how I would like to spell it. So if there is one thing that I'll take away from it every single day is patience. And I think I apply that to my life, which I would not say I'm 100% able to, but I try, like all of us do. But there is something about origami that sort of makes me patient, wants me more at peace, makes me more at peace with myself. Otherwise, I'm a very, very, very impatient person. People who know me, they know me that I am so impatient, and they're surprised that a person like me can fold for hours sitting on a table. So I think that is what I take away from it.
is to become a more patient version of myself, and to wait for good things to happen, because it takes time for things to obviously take place.
So we have questions common for both Aditi and architect Hemali. So Chris,
my question to both of y'all would be, what are the factors that y'all keep in mind before y'all interpret the context or a project, and how do those factors impact or shape the design? So before y'all enter the context, or before your project is kind of given to you, what do you keep in mind to look at?
I think the factors would remain same more or less. I feel, I mean, of course, the requirement is very different, but I think in terms of budget, aesthetics, space, dimension, what kind of requirement we have, and these are like general aspect. I think Aditi will agree, because
Yeah, absolutely. The same things that I mentioned in my previous question. All of that plays a very important role
very important.
in the planning of a project, and planning is, of course, the most important part of the project. So planning and installing, I think, are the two very important parts of a project. Beach mein banana is just a little piece, is just a little part of it. But most of the time, energy is consumed in the planning and, of course, the installation. And in Himali's case, actually doing the work on
I
site.
think on site, and I think resources for me are
And there are so many challenges. I mean, you've planned something, but it never turns out that way. And when you're there prepared, you feel that I'm all prepared, but there comes God walking towards you, and that's the fun of it. Actually, that's when you emerge victorious. So yeah.
and so I have a question for both of y'all, a common question. So after viewing each other's works, what will be the takeaway for both of y'all that y'all will take back to your practices, each of your practices?
I think takeaway for me, I think it just opened a new avenue of thinking what the
Of collaboration.
work,
Yes.
of collaboration.
Yes.
And I think the way I see when she was showing her presentation, when I said I literally saw the patterns in nature in terms of, the flower buds. I could see the petals. I mean, it just came like an animated thing into my eyes. I don't know why, but it literally came like, because I think while I was studying, I took many pictures of some patterns in nature. There's actually a book called Landscape Patterns by a very wonderful book. So it's kind of resonate in that way. So I would say that it's not only a paper making exercise or paper folding exercise. It's more about how do you
In fact, I would like to add to this is it's for the first time that I was actually able to see how origami and landscape is so connected, because landscape is ever changing, right? It's never the same. It will keep changing with seasons, with years, with I mean, there's so many factors that will keep changing the landscape, and so is origami. The folds that you make, they're so organic. You can play around with them. You can keep changing them. In fact, that's something that I really want to explore using kinetic movements. I really want to add that to my origami, and of course, nature would be the first thing that I will look at, because there is origami in every bud that blooms, every leaf that comes out. That it's so beautiful. If you look at a palm leaf, a huge palm leaf that opens, and the way it opens, it just unfolds circularly, and then it opens like a fan. It is gorgeous to look at that. So of course, there are so many interpretations of, and I am constantly inspired by nature, because there is no other better inspiration than nature. And I'm so glad to have met you, Himali. So we can definitely do something together, for sure. Yeah.
So we have a couple of questions by the attendees as well, but we'll continue the conversation on Instagram, and the speakers will answer the questions and they'll be posted on the Instagram page. So stay tuned. Moving on to Saakshi.
Thank you, moderators and speakers. That was a very engaging session. I think we all can agree that we see things very differently after today's session.
Thank you, Aditi and Hemali, for a wonderful presentation. I would like to also thank our moderators for this evening, Chris and Sreshta, our lovely audience, the Clayworks and DU team. Have a good evening and a great weekend.